Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back. Let's just dig right into it. This is another edition of Boxing News with the IBFP, and let's just dig right into it. Eddie Hearn, as you all know, has came out and made a recent statement in regards to Tyson Fury and his new opponent, his new selection with Tom Schwartz. He came out and says that's a terrible fight, so let's just break that down. Let's start with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is 27-0 with one draw, 19 knockouts. The lone draw comes against the Deontay Wilder, where myself and many other viewers believe that Tyson Fury was robbed of the WBC belt. Now, if you look at this guy that he's fighting, this Tom Schwartz, Tom Schwartz is an undefeated fighter, so we can't give him, we can't, disrespect him and call him a bum or a tomato can or anything like that. But what we can say about Tom Schwartz is that he's not an elite level fighter because Tom Schwartz has never been at the top of boxing, never fought elite level or top level competition, never been a proven fighter. He's a domestic level fighter. He's 24-0 with 16 knockouts. He's 6'5.5". He's 24 years old. He's from Germany. He's an interesting boxer, but a lot of the guys that he's been stopping and beating are just not top level opposition. He has no standout name on his entire resume, no name that will make you think that this guy is the real deal. There's always a small chance that this guy could be the real deal. We just don't know. But he's been fighting too many tomato can type of guys, so we don't know if Tom Schwartz really is or not. What I will say is I expected better from Tyson Fury's first fight. I expected a much better, more interesting fight for Tyson Fury other than the Tom Schwartz. It was very disappointing. I think a better fight for him would have been an Alexander Povetkin. It didn't have to be Joshua. It didn't have to be Wilder. It didn't have to be those top guys. It didn't have to be a Vladimir Klitschko. But it could have been someone like Alexander Povetkin. It could have been someone that, like a Derek Chisora. It didn't have to be the top flight guys. Maybe to be unfair to put Dillian White in it, but I get it. Derek Chisora, he's already fought him, beat him, destroyed him. I get it, but you got to give him somebody else. And I think Povetkin or Luis Ortiz, these would have all been good opposition fights, good guys, where he wouldn't have been at risk facing Dillian White, Anthony Joshua, or Deontay Wilder, the top three guys in the division aside from himself. So that's what I would have expected. Just another very good opponent, but he went with Tom Schwartz, so it is what it is. I just see this as another tune-up fight for Tyson Fury. I think Tyson Fury stops Tom Schwartz at some point in that fight. And if that goes the distance, then it means that Tyson Fury is looking probably just to get rounds in. But let's keep going. Another edition of boxing news here. We have more. We have Bob Arum came out and stated that Canelo Alvarez is the best at 160. He'll beat Jacobs and Golovkin, and he's already beat Golovkin in a controversial decision. As far as Danny Jacobs, Canelo Alvarez may just do that. Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, and Danny Jacobs is a 50-50 fight. So that's a close fight with Danny Jacobs and Canelo Alvarez. I think that fight could go either way. Both are top opposition fighters. Both of them are elite fighters. Both of them are world champions, and both of them have went to distance with the hardest puncher in the middleweight division in the Gennady Golovkin. And so you got to look at this as a unique fight. And a lot of shots that Canelo didn't get hit with against Triple G, he's going to get hit with against Daniel Jacobs. But some of the hits that Daniel Jacobs were lethargic and let other guys hit him with, such as a Selecki, such as a Triple G, Canelo Alvarez is going to make him pay for any lulls or lacks in this fight. So this is going to be a very competitive and difficult fight for both guys. It's a 50-50 fight. Literally, either guy can win. And the more I think about this fight, the more I look at this fight, the more I think that this fight ultimately could turn out to be a draw. I know that's a little crazy, but it's very possible. Let's keep going with more boxing news. We have Oslander Usyk had a lot of fights to be lined up. He's going to make his debut against Carlos Takam, so that's going to be very interesting. But since then, Alexander Povetkin has already given his consent. This is according to his manager, to fight either Usyk, Dillian White, or Luis Ortiz. And so now it looks like they're preparing these offers. And so since Usyk is out, they're looking at Dillian White and Luis Ortiz as next potential fights. I think for the Dillian White fight to happen, too much would have to happen, since that would be such a risky fight. I think the Luis Ortiz versus Alexander Povetkin would be a natural fit. It's a pretty big fight for both fighters. and both fighters are stiff competition for the other. So I think that'll be a great fight. I think Luis Ortiz needs that fight for recognition as bad as Alexander Povetkin needs it to stay amongst the top in the heavyweight division. I think that would be the perfect fight if these guys can go ahead and get that made. Alexander Povetkin, Luis Ortiz, I think that would both have top credible names on each one of these guys' resumes. I think that would make the most sense. But let's keep going. And this is according to BoxingScene.com. Not Adrian Broner, but Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao. You see Manny Pacquiao put out a recent poll on his social media, and he named, all the guys that, who the fans would want to see him, and he inexplicably left out Errol Spence Jr. And one would surmise the reason why he left out Errol Spence Jr. is because he's not looking to fight Errol Spence Jr. So there's been a lot of calls that, Manny Pacquiao is ducking Errol Spence Jr. At this stage in his career, Manny Pacquiao can't duck anyone. He's a certified Hall of Famer. He's a former world champion. The guy has done it all in the sport of boxing. He is not ducking anyone, even if he decides against it because he's well past his prime. He's 40 plus years old. He does not claim to be the best boxer ever in history. He does not make any of those assertions. Manny Pacquiao is just a top level fighter who's past his prime and who's just looking for big paydays. And there's nothing wrong with that. Manny Pacquiao is still a dangerous fight for many of these guys, and believe it or not, I still think he's a dangerous fight for Errol Spence. I would favor Errol Spence in the fight. I would favor Errol Spence to win. But that doesn't mean that Manny Pacquiao has no chance. Manny Pacquiao still relies on speed. He still has a lot of pop and power in his shots. So Manny Pacquiao is a dangerous opponent for anyone, believe it or not. But with all that being said, I think Spence may be too much to bite off for Manny Pacquiao. I think the size difference may just be too much. And so I don't think that would be a wise fight for him. Evander Holyfield came out and recently made a statement, according to BoxingScene.com as well, and stated that fighting at heavyweight won't be easy for Evander Usyk. Now, Usyk will be facing much bigger, stronger guys, and the pop in the shots is going to be like nothing he's ever experienced at cruiserweight. So you have to understand that fighting a Tony Bellew, who hit you quite a bit, is going to be a completely different challenge than fighting, guys who can just literally lay you out with one shot. Even an Alexander Povetkin for Evander Usyk is going to be a problem because Alexander Povetkin has a lot of pop in his shots, has elite knockout power, and could really stop or hurt Usyk. What saves Usyk in the heavyweight division and what makes him a competitive fighter and hard to beat is because he has so many skill sets, so many different ways to win a fight, and he also uses angles. To be a heavyweight, he might be just the most skilled, him and Tyson Fury, because this guy really has elite level skill set. He has elite level, talent. He's dominated and taken over the cruiserweight division, became undisputed at cruiserweight. So, yes, it's going to be a difficult road for Usyk because he's going to face fighters with a varying, type of power and different things that they bring to the fight and pressure. And if Usyk lets up off the gas or is not focused for 1 second, he could get hurt. But with all that being said, Usyk should still be successful at heavyweight because he has a skill set that should easily translate to the heavyweight division. But let's keep going. Another thing that came out is Deontay Wilder stated that Errol Spence still has a ways to go before being the best at 147. And I'll give Deontay Wilder that. This is probably the smartest thing that he's ever stated. And that's regards to, if you look at Errol Spence Jr., he's a very entertaining fighter. He's a very good fighter. I like Errol Spence Jr. I think he's the top 2 fighter in the welterweight division. I put him at number 2. I put Terrence Crawford at number 1. And I think Errol Spence Jr. has the potential to be an elite fighter. I think Errol Spence Jr. has the potential to be a great fighter. But Errol Spence Jr. has to raise his level of competition besides guys that are moving up in weight. Besides guys coming off of knockout losses, he has to unify the division. He has to fight a guy like Terrence Crawford to truly be considered the best. He can't continue to prioritize putting other guys' smaller fights ahead of the Terrence Crawford fight when that's clearly the defining fight of his career to this point if he fights that guy. Because we've already seen some deficiencies in Spence game. So I'm no Spence fanboy. I can call it down the middle. I think he's a very talented and gifted fighter. I like Errol Spence. But at the same time, I look at Errol Spence and I realize that he is going to have some trouble when he faces guys like Shawn Porter. It's not going to be no walk in the park. Now, I don't think Shawn Porter is the most talented, the most gifted at welterweight, but he's going to present unique challenges to Errol Spence that he has not had to deal with. Because if you see Mikey Garcia fought Errol Spence Jr. and he couldn't stop him, It's reasonable to think that Shawn Porter will be a problem in a challenge for Errol Spence. Doesn't mean Spence wouldn't win. I would still favor Errol Spence to beat Shawn Porter. Don't get me wrong. I just think that it'll be a much more difficult task than many people expect. You got to realize that every fight that Shawn Porter's been in has never been easy for anyone to dominate Shawn Porter. Yordenis Ugas did a pretty good job, but even then, Shawn Porter was just not an easy guy to get around. But Ugas had a different type of boxing style that Errol Spence Jr. simply does not possess. So it'll be a much different fight for him. But I think that would be very, very interesting. Another piece of boxing news is Abnormatis receives medical clearance to start training again. Abnormatis basically had, the eye issue. He's a former 3-division world champion. He's an Olympian. So Abnormatis has, did a lot in his career. He had to pull out the fight against Gervonta Davis, I believe, on February 9th because of that injury. And so now he's able to resume boxing activities and he's able to resume his career. So that's a great news for Abnormatis. Now, Paulie Malignaggi, on the other hand, has stated that Errol Spence is the best at 147. He believes he would beat Terence Crawford and Keith Thurman at this point in his career. And I think those scenarios are very possible, although I believe Keith Thurman, if he's at his best and is fully recuperated from his injuries, has enough tune-ups and is back in a rare form, I think that he should be able to beat Errol Spence Jr. because I think his skill set is way beyond or surpassed the skill set of Errol Spence Jr. Doesn't mean he's stronger than Errol Spence Jr. It means that he's a full-fledged welterweight. He has pop in his shots. He's able to use lateral movement. All of the things that Mikey Garcia, Lamont Peterson, Kell Brook, all these type of guys just simply don't have at 147 pounds. I think Keith Thurman does, if the Keith Thurman of old comes back. But that doesn't mean that it'll be an easy fight for Keith Thurman. Errol Spence Jr. could easily stop him as well. With Terence Crawford, I think that's a closer fight, but I think that Terence Crawford, would win more decisively because Terence Crawford has a better skill set than even Keith Thurman. I think Terence Crawford is the best welterweight in the division, period. He's the only one, in my opinion, that's proven to be elite over everyone. He's the only guy that I have listed at number 1 or number 2, depending on how you see it, in my pound-for-pound list next to Canelo Alvarez, because I think Terence Crawford becoming undisputed at 140, moving up in his first fight at welterweight, winning a world title, demolishing a Jeff Horn who gave Manny Pacquiao all kind of problems. And, he doesn't get enough credit for the Benavidez fight, but Benavidez wasn't hurt or injured or anything. That's a false narrative that a lot of fanboys go with. And so I think that would be very interesting. So let's just keep it going. And when you look at it, Marcos El Chino Maidana, it looks like he's returning in June for a fight against a possible Phil LaGreco who's already stopped by Errol Spence Jr., Phil LaGreco who's already stopped by Amir King Khan. So if you look at it like this is just simply a tune-up for Marcos El Chino Maidana, and it's rumored that this particular fight could take place around 150 to 154 pounds as Marcos El Chino Maidana is continuing to lose weight. But once again, Unbiased as always, it's the IBFP. Please share, like, and you must absolutely subscribe.